to draw your attention to a handout. It's quite interesting. It's from PVD, and it is the employees that are hired throughout the state as appraisers, county appraisers, or work in the appraiser's office. I thought each of you might be interested in that data. We'll go ahead and I do have a bill request. Just a second. Well, we'll wait till the bill request till next week. That way, committee, let's go ahead and open the hearing, or actually, let's vote on the minutes. We have enough here, a quorum now. What are your wishes on the January 19th, 25th, and 26th minutes? Senator Erickson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we approve the committee minutes from January 19, 25, and 26.
Thank you. There's been a motion. Is there a second? Okay. Senator, it's been moved by Senator Erickson, seconded by Senator Peck. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Committee will open the hearing on Senate Bill 58. Thank you, Amelia.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill number 58 would provide a sales tax exemption for certain purchases by disabled veterans of the Armed Forces of the United States beginning January 1 of 2024. The bill would provide a sales tax exemption for sales of tangible personal property or services, except it would not include motor vehicle sales. It would provide this exemption to Kansas residents who have been honorably discharged from the active service in any branch of Armed Forces of the United States and who are certified by the Department of Veterans Affairs to be in receipt of disability at the 100% compensation rate, provided that that disability is permanent and sustained through military action or accident or disease while contracted while in the active service. There is a provision in the bill that would provide that the surviving spouse of an eligible person would continue to be eligible for the exemption until such spouse remarries. Sales qualifying for this exemption shall not exceed $50,000 per eligible person per year. Procedurally, an eligible person would make an application to the Department of Revenue for a veteran exemption identification number, and the Department of Revenue would provide an exemption certificate in the form of a driver's license size card that would show their identification number. The Secretary would also be able to request an eligible person claiming exemption to provide a statement regarding total sales amounts in a particular year for purposes of administering this. The bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Amelia. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, thanks. Committee, our first conferee is Senator Peck. It is not our first time to hear this legislation, so welcome in another capacity to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, committee members. This is a little bit different from legislation that we had last session, which was Senate Bill 180. But I appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 58. I also appreciate my co-sponsors, which when you look at the legislation, you will see that 3 of the Assessment and Taxation Committee members are co-sponsors on this legislation, along with myself. That means 4 of the 13 members are sponsors on the legislation. Senate Bill 58, to my way of thinking, is a way of saying a big thank you to our disabled military veterans for their service to the United States of America, therefore for their service to us as individuals. As the revisor indicated, this would provide a sales tax exemption for our 100% disabled military veterans because of their service in the United States military. This sales tax exemption is different from 180 in that it includes all items except for motor vehicles, or it's intended to be automobiles like cars and trucks. We have, according to the fiscal note, 5,838 disabled veterans who would qualify today for this exemption, should it be passed. Quite frankly, it's embarrassing to me as a Kansas legislator that Kansas has not done a better job of saying thank you to our disabled military veterans in our state. Particularly when I look at our neighboring state just to the south of us, they really provide benefits for their disabled military veterans as relates to tax exemptions. Years ago, writing insurance on an individual who had a nice brand new red Ford pickup truck, I just made a comment about that being a really nice truck, and he said he liked it, and I said, that probably cost, I'm thinking from Kansas terms, I said, that probably cost you a pretty penny to get that registered. He said, yes, $36. I said, well, I don't mean just the registration fee. I mean the total cost of registering your brand new pickup truck in the state of Oklahoma. He said, no, it's $36. I said, okay, you're going to have to help me understand this. He said, I'm a 100% disabled veteran. I don't have to pay any income tax. I don't have to pay any sales tax. I don't have to pay any property tax. I don't have to pay any vehicle tax. State of Oklahoma really thanks their veterans for their service by providing them much more than what we're looking at in Senate Bill 58. Other states have several exemptions as well, which will now forget about other states and focus on just Kansas. What can we do for our disabled military veterans? I believe that Senate Bill 58 is a good, strong first step for doing that. Now, as it relates to the fiscal note I strongly disagree with, and I put a quote in my testimony from the fiscal note. These estimates assume that every eligible veteran will use the maximum $50,000 exemption each year. I emphasize some of those words myself. This is going to be nearly impossible. Sadly, a lot of our disabled military veterans don't even earn $50,000, so they certainly will not be spending $50,000 in purchasing sales taxable items. When we had our bill last session, Senate Bill 188, in visiting with the Department of Revenue, they told me that at that time, they believe, according to some numbers they had, that most homes spend about $60,000 a year. And of that $60,000, they estimate that about $25,000 a year is spent on sales taxable items. And I realize those numbers may be adjusted a little bit because of inflation for this year, but I really believe the fiscal note should be closer to half of what it is. Now, that doesn't take into account the fact that we could likely potentially bring in additional residents to the state of Kansas along with their incomes, which would spur other economic activity to our state. So and in fairness to the division of budget, it's really difficult to come up with a good estimate as far as what the fiscal note would be. Now, I have attached to my testimony a couple Oklahoma Tax Commission cards. This is what I believe we would do in the state of Kansas, is issue basically a driver's license size laminated card that would have the veteran's name, address, and then on the back side it could have a barcode or that other stuff. I don't know what it's called technically, but where a merchant can scan it. In Oklahoma, for example, you have this card, you go into Quick Trip, buy a cup of coffee, or go to McDonald's, or go anywhere. You just lay the card down, the merchant sees that. Some places they scan it, and they do not charge a sales tax on your purchases. These are two actual cards from individuals that I picked up in my work in selling storm shelters to people. Of course, I've redacted names for privacy, but you can see one from Dewey, Oklahoma, one from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and I could have gotten many, many more, but I thought, well, a couple will just give you an idea. So with that, Madam Chairman, I will stand down, and I'll be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions? Senator Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, thank you for being here today. I remember we actually worked on this legislation last year. And so maybe a question for research, put some questions. I guess my question, Madam Chair, well, to the Senator, let me start with. We had the bill last year. I think there were some questions about workability with the card and vendors. As the committee, did we not basically introduce some sort of a substitute, basically policy piece where, wasn't there like a standard deduction or something that we put on Maybe my question for the
Actually,
senator.
Senator Holland, what we ended up doing was doubling the personal exemption on income tax for veterans, disabled veterans last year. That's what we ended up doing because of the logistics. We had a difficult time on this, the logistics of implementation. So if we could, I understand your question. It'd probably be more for revenue. If we could go ahead with the conferees, or do you have a specific question on the implementation?
I guess my question for the senator would be, is that then would he be advocating that we go back and basically strike the policy piece we implemented last year into law if this were to go into effect? What's your thoughts on that?
Thanks for the question, Senator Holland. My answer is no. If we're providing any benefits to our disabled veterans, these people, I believe we owe. We have the freedoms we enjoy in the United States because of their service. So I would not support reducing or going back on any promises that we have made with them. My thought as far as administration of this, Madam Chairman, if the Sooners can do it, the Jayhawks can do it better. I really believe, because if Oklahoma can administer this program without, I've talked to merchants, and I've had no merchants that have complained or said that it's cumbersome or a difficult task. Sure, in implementing and getting it started, there could be some challenges. There always is when you implement something new such as this. But I don't believe that it would be that challenging. And again, going back on the double exemption that I would say, no, let's don't do that. Let's provide these disabled. But again, remember, these people are disabled because they served in the military.
Okay. No, thank you for moving the legislation forward, and thank you for your response. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Committee, our next conferee is Michael Kelly. Welcome back to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Chairman Tyson. Thank you, Senators. Michael Kelly, I'm with Kansas Council of Chapters of Military Officers Association of America. We support SB 58. I want to read you verbatim what it says in the Code of Federal Regulations about the meaning of 100% disability rating. This is in Part 4, Title 38 of the Code of Federal Regulations. The percentage ratings represent, as far as practically can be determined, the average impairment in earning capacity resulting from such diseases and injuries and their residual conditions in civil occupations. So a veteran that has a service-connected rating of 100%, in the view of the federal government, has a 100% reduction in their earning capacity. When it's permanent, they consider that to be for the rest of their life. And unfortunately, many of these folks are severely injured and their life expectancy is curtailed beneath that of the typical person of their age. So it is correct, as Senator Peck said, that we owe these folks something because they have sacrificed. The Veterans Administration just put out in the last 2 weeks their latest report on veterans benefits. They report that there's 5.4 million disabled veterans in the United States, and about 45,300 of those are in Kansas, and that's all disability ratings. 1.1 million veterans are rated 100% in our country. Based on the statistics of that, the number in Kansas is about 9,200. That's a little bit different than the fiscal note, which I think was based on last year's data. But so it's somewhere 8,000, 9,000 people would be eligible for this benefit if this bill becomes law. I agree with the statements of Senator Peck that there are a number of these folks that don't have $50,000 in income. Right now, if you're 100% disabled, your annual benefit is just under $40,000. And if you're not eligible for Social Security, there's really not much else income source because these folks' earning capacity has been reduced to zero in the eyes of the federal government. This bill shows tangible respect for the sacrifice of these veterans. My final comment, and you may remember me from when I testified on SB 80, not all veterans get their disability rating through the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. There are disability ratings granted by the military services under Title 10, Chapter 61. I would not stop this bill to fix that. I'm working with the House Veterans Committee and Chairman Ellis and Vice Chairman Dodson. We're going to try and introduce, or they're going to try and introduce a bill next year that would take care of that and also define veteran, disabled veteran for all Kansas statutes. So it's common and it's consistent with the federal regulations. Happy to stand for any questions, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I'm glad you're working on that effort. That's been an issue for years, so appreciated. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
Our next conferee is Jesse Lopez. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Chairwoman Tyson and committee members for the opportunity to talk for you today in support of Senate Bill 58. I represent Post 1186 of the VFW. I did move to Kansas, back to Kansas from Oklahoma, and I do know it cost me about $3,000 or $4,000 a year to move back to Kansas. I was raised in Kansas. And I'd like to see a lot more federal retirements and federal disability checks back in the state of Kansas. Right now, as we know it, about 35,000 veterans in the state of Kansas are receiving disability income from the Veterans Affairs, of about 200,000 that we know of. That's about 165,000 people that, if they were getting $3,000 a month from the VA, is just short of $6 billion a year back in Kansas. This bill would help veterans improve their living conditions and drive down the homeless population in Kansas. We see it every day in our community. We have veterans who live in trailers, who can't afford to put money back in their houses. They don't have air conditioning or windows. We believe they could use this money to improve where they live and their living conditions. And to be frank, we would like to see the number of suicides down to zero. And we believe that this bill passing would help that number. When you live in squalor or feel like you're not treated like the rest of the citizens, it's hard to have any dignity, and I do believe that is where a lot of suicides come from. About 25,000 vets live in homes with major problems in quality, whether that be windows, roofs, doors, and we believe that they could use this money to put back in their homes. We would like to see more native Kansans come back and retire in Kansas, but when you get out of the military and you have a choice to be in a place like Oklahoma or Colorado or Missouri, any of our surrounding states where you're going to have more money in your pocket at the end of the day, it's hard to make a choice to come back to Kansas. And we would like, I know I would like more of my brothers back home where they belong. So thank you, committee.
Thank you. Would you stand for questions?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to say thank you, Jesse, for your service to our nation, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It'd be great to get as many veterans back to their homeland here in Kansas as we can. Just one real quick request to the entire audience. I know everybody over here will thank me. Someone's phone has been going off for about 5 minutes and driving everybody crazy. So if everyone can check their phone and just make sure their alarm's not going off, but someone's alarm's going off in the audience. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your service. I was going to thank everybody, and I do appreciate Senator Blasey for saying that. And this is going to seem like an odd question, but we do make decisions up here on and weight where we want to put tax cuts and other issues. So if we did pass legislation for disabled veterans, somewhat of a property tax freeze, actually through a rebate. Okay, so we've done that. We did increase with the income a little bit with the benefits there. And we haven't done anything on sales tax. But if you had to choose which one would be the highest priority, what would you say? Motor vehicle? Because I know there's a property tax bill to remove it on motor vehicles, or property tax on their homes, or sales tax or income tax. And I know this is a tough question, but I'm just curious where your priority would be so that, and I know you're one person, but where would you like to see the emphasis?
Well, the emphasis, really, that's a hard question to answer, Senator.
It's just hypothetical.
Yeah, we'd like to, whatever option keeps more money in a veteran's pocket, to be honest with you.
That's what I'd like to hear. Okay. Okay. So, thank you. Senator Holland.
And Chair, I do appreciate the Chairwoman's comments because, first of all, everybody on this committee truly appreciates the service that our veterans have done, for our nation. We will forever be in a debt of, gratitude for that. I guess what my question is, though, is that have you just, and whether this is you, sir, or maybe the other conferees here, just, I got to ask this question, is that have you engaged our federal delegation? Because it seems to me when we talk about our veterans who serve in our U.S. forces, I want to be sure our federal government is taking care of our soldiers and sailors and our men and women who serve. And I guess my question is that, are they doing their fair share? I mean, this is the question I have as far as, I appreciate your ask. But at the end of the day, I also want to ask, basically, does the federal government need to take more ownership? Because, you hear all the stories about, the suicides, the veterans, and not getting access to services and stuff like that. And it's like, is our federal government not taking care of our men and women? And that's just a question I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And I understand the question, and I just don't get how it relates to the bill that we're on. Mine was
I'll
a
withdraw.
priority on the bill. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To follow along in line with the chair's question, I certainly do not want to put words in your mouth at all, but disabled veterans, do a lot of them not own vehicles, not own homes, or do most of them, you believe, own a vehicle? Because she asked about a vehicle tax, she asked about property tax, she asked about income tax. So I guess I have several questions. I'll just ask them all at once, and then you can sort of take it from there. The question would be, do a lot of our disabled veterans not own a home, not own an automobile, and do you know how their disability income is or is not taxed in the state of Kansas? Which I know that last one's going to be a tough one.
I do believe that most disabled veterans own a home and a vehicle. As far as your last question, Senator, I'm not sure.
So, and what, I'm just thinking about those bills if they come, I know a couple of them passed the House. If we take a look at them, when we take a look at them, what would be your priority? If we could have them all, that would be great and wonderful. I mean, if I could pass every single tax cut that comes through this committee, but that's a reality that I know is not going to happen. And that's all I was asking the question for, is which would be the priority. And we do have a few other conferees, but if you would like to address that.
Thank you, Senator. I just believe that maybe we're looking at this the wrong way. We're looking at spending a little bit of money. Everyone knows you have to spend money to make money. And if we can, out of that 35,000 veterans that are receiving veterans disability claims, there's 165,000 that we know of, at least that we know of, that aren't receiving anything. At $3,000 a month, that 165,000 turns in almost $6 billion a year. And we would have another surplus next year. I think any breaks we can give disabled veterans, we need to do our part. Suicide is it's fitting that Suicide Awareness Week was this week earlier. It's a very close topic for a lot of us. I want veterans to feel like they have their dignity again and not feel like they live in squalor, and be afforded the same opportunities they are that states all surrounding the great state of Kansas are. And I really think we're doing disabled veterans a misservice. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up is SSG Lauren Osborne. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Tyson and ladies and gentlemen, honorable senators. I want to start out by saying I'm not a 100% disabled veteran. I'm here on behalf of the many that I represent. And several of the things that my esteemed colleagues have mentioned, they are very true. The statistics from 2019 were the most recent I could come up with, but there are near 195,430 wartime veterans that are stateside. And in just my catchment area alone, 7,800 VA reported veterans. Of those, 1.5 to 1.7% of them are 100% service-connected, permanent, and total. That doesn't include, as I've seen the bill doesn't include, those who are total disability, individual unemployability rated, which is separate from that. They are not total and permanent at that point, because they could lose that if they fail to meet the requirements. And I feel that's something we should address later, because that's a gap that the VA has addressed that I don't feel we are. I want to spend a moment of my time also to answer Senator Holland's question a moment ago, and that is by posing a different question in return. And I realize that might be a little circular, but
And realize we have another hearing.
yes, I will be brief, I promise. Thank you, Senator. The VA and the federal government have set requirements that each individual must meet in order to be rated for their disabilities. The failure in access that is given by the federal government is not a failure in benefits. It's a failure in widening the passage large enough for the majority of veterans to make it through. So addressing a taxation bill that provides relief at the state level will shortcut that failure on the VA's part and on the federal government's part for sure.
Sir, I'm going to have to rein you in. I'm
Yes.
sorry. It's a great topic, but we got to stay on the bill, and we do have another hearing. So
Statistics suggest 1,280.
wrap up. Yeah.
Yes, they suggest 1,280 veteran growth within 5 years. And then after 2023, we see a significant drop in 100% permanent and total veterans as we start losing the rest of our World War II and Vietnam veterans. The net effect of this bill is more to bring veterans back home and change the median age so that we have more people and more purchasing power and more people that are exercising benefits here to put revenue into our state. It's not just about providing yet another taxation break for a population of people who admittedly have served our country. It's also about bringing those people to us so that we can help them realize their goals in future. I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony
Thank you.
and your service. Committee, I'll draw your attention to written testimony. Reverend Randy Dyke, David Koopmans, Ryan York. Is there any other proponent on the bill? Seeing none, any opponents? Seeing none, any neutral? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 58. And I again want to stress, we cannot thank you guys, you gentlemen, enough for your service and what you've done for our state and our nation. And we will do what we can to try to reciprocate that service. Thank you. Committee will open the hearing on Senate Bill 101. And I should correct myself, we can never reciprocate the sacrifices that you and your families and friends have made. So, but we will do our best to support it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill number 101 would provide a sales tax exemption for area agencies on aging. It would amend KSA 793606 to provide a sales tax exemption for a not-for-profit corporation that is designated an area agency on aging by the Secretary for Aging and Disability Services, and that is exempt from federal income tax pursuant to 501c3. It would be for the purpose of coordinating and providing seniors and those with disabilities with services that promote person-centered care, including home-delivered meals, congregate meal settings, long-term case management, and other preventative and intervention services to help those recipients remain in their homes and their communities. The sales tax exemption itself would be for the following items. It would include purchases of tangible personal property or services by an area agency on aging, sales of property by an area agency on aging, and purchases of tangible personal property or services purchased by a contractor who is doing services relating to facilities of an area agency on aging. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Amelia. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, thank you. I would ask, is this the exact same language that was introduced in the House? And not to put you on the spot, you can get back to us. I'm afraid it was. And yes,
It may be. I can check while
yes,
we
that'd be
have
great.
the conferees.
Okay, thank you. Our first conferee is Senator Reddy, and welcome in a different capacity.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Taxation Committee. This is my first bill I've introduced, and I'm thankful to get a hearing on it. I wasn't sure if that would happen. We had so many bills in taxation. But this is something that we deal with in our community as a local elected official. We hear about our aging population as the increasing demographic in our community. Although we are a university town, we have our 25-year-olds and younger, and then we have our 65-year-olds and older, and that's increasing much faster than our student population, as are the needs. And I believe our agency does an extremely good job, but unfortunately, there's an equity issue because there are 11 agencies on aging, and 8 of them do not receive a sales tax exemption. And this is one that calls for such an exemption at this time. Most of our population in this demographic typically don't have much transportation, don't have equitable technology, and are facing incredible health needs and need services. This would at least put a little bit of money into their coffers so they can provide the services necessary. It's not going to fill the entire gap, but it will help a little bit. And we're hoping that you will consider this, this bill, and hopefully we can move it on to the floor. With that, I'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Committee, any questions? So committee, I would ask why are, and this isn't maybe obvious, but not to everyone, why are 8 of them not included in the 11? Why are only 3 exempt?
Exactly, and thank you for the question, Madam Chair. I'm going to defer that question to the experts in the room. I've asked them, but I felt like they can probably articulate that response much better than myself.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you. Committee, our next conferee is Pat Donahue. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I think I was invited here so we'd be sure we had a real senior citizen to talk about this issue. I'm a resident of Lawrence, Kansas. I'm a native Kansan, born in Halstead, grew up in Emporia. I've been involved with the area agencies on aging all across the state of Kansas, sometimes professionally and other times as a volunteer. I'm a volunteer now in the North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging area, headquartered in Manhattan, covers Emporia, my hometown. So we've been watching this issue for about 3 or 4 years. first came to our attention when we had to put a new HVAC system in our office in Manhattan, and we had to pay sales tax. And that was a hefty load. It took away from money we would use for the services we provide in the 18-county area we serve. So we look deeper into that, and you find out that the 3 urban agencies basically serve just 1 or 2 counties. And because of that, they operate under the auspices of county government, and therefore they're tax exempt. Now, the rest of us serve large areas of Kansas, in our case, 18 counties, about 57,000 people. And we don't have that exemption. And so we think there are a couple of things wrong with that. Tax equity is the first one, that's already come up. Why do they get, if they have to put up a new HVA system, they don't have to pay sales tax on that. They're exempt under the county government that they operate under. You might ask, well, why don't we do it that way? Well, try to bring 18 counties together is a difficult administrative task. So it's just not fair. That's how we see it. Another problem with it is you think about the urban-rural split in Kansas. Now, the counties that are exempt are the urban counties. And Senator Holland, you know, up there in Leavenworth, they're part of the Wyandotte County Leavenworth, and so they're tax exempt. The Jayhawk Area Agency on Aging in Lawrence, Topeka, not exempt. So they're paying sales tax while the urban people aren't. Now, where are all the young people in the state? Are they in Colby? Are they in Jewell County? No, they're in the urban areas. So where we have the most service need, where the most seniors are, we pay the sales tax. So it's inequitable. Anyway, a couple other things I want to say, and then I'll shut up.
Yeah, we're about out of time.
Yeah.
We have a few more inquiries.
I'm one of those veterans that they just talked about. So I support that legislation too.
Nice plug. Are there any questions for Mr. Donahue? Seeing none, thank you. Next up is Randall Hardy, or should I say Senator? Welcome to the
Thank
Tax
you, Madam Chair and committee members. It's great to be back. I'm a former state senator. I'm also representing today the Kansas Silverhead Legislature. And we were, as a group, enacted by a Senate concurrent resolution number 1649 back in 1982. So we've been representing seniors since 1982, roughly 40 years. And I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 101. Every year, the Silverhead Legislature gathers in Topeka in the House chamber, and we discuss and debate the issues that are important to Kansas seniors, all 670,000 of them. And this year, as one of our 6 resolutions, contained the information that is included in Senate Bill 101. And that is to provide our area agencies on aging with additional funds that are critically needed to support seniors in the state of Kansas. The seniors, many seniors in Kansas struggle to have a safe, dignified life and a decent quality of life. And these seniors, to a large extent, lean heavily on the area agencies on aging for basic services. And every dollar that the agencies have to spend are precious to them. They don't have an excess of dollars, and the sales tax exemption would provide them critical funding to make sure that our Kansas seniors continue to have quality of life and some of the basic services that we take for granted. And with that, I'm happy to, so I hope that you would support Senate Bill 101 and would be happy to stand for questions at appropriate time.
Committee, any questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Pardon my ignorance. I have one quick question, Mr. Hardy. Is all of Kansas covered by an area agency on aging, or are there areas that don't have an area agency on aging?
Every county is covered.
every county is covered? Is that what you said?
Correct, but there are only 11 agencies, and so there are several that have, 15, 18 counties and as part of that.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
You're welcome. Committee, any other questions? Thank you. Next up is Julie Govert Walter. Is it Govert or Govert? Govert.
Go.
Go.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to thank you for this, for you and for other members to have this hearing today. Our organization serves 63,000 older Kansans and their caregivers in an 18-county region. So we are based in Manhattan. We have offices in Emporia and Salina. And we go, some of our counties go to the Nebraska border. We go all the way to Ellsworth and Lincoln and Mitchell and Jewell, and we come over to Potawatomi. Anyway, it's a big map that we're serving. We are focused on providing services that maintain the independence and dignity of older Kansans and also support the caregivers. We have a variety of services. I'm going to refer you to my written testimony on the services that we provide. We do support Senate Bill 101. I want to point out that our agency, in fact, does give back to the state every day with every person that we help. For example, the Senior Care Act money that we have, that cost, and this is a statewide average, $396 per person on that Senior Care Act program. We are coordinating those services. Our staff is working to coordinate those services, and we are diverting people from the cost of a nursing facility, which would cost the state somewhere right around $6,103, current statewide average. We are enhancing communities' economic power. We help Kansans and caregivers stay in their communities so they can make local purchases, so that they can be part of the community, spiritual and civic organizations. And we also provide volunteer opportunities. We also, very important here, help caregivers remain in the workforce because services not only are often supporting seniors, but they're supporting caregivers who need to be in our workplaces. And another point I want to emphasize here is that area agencies on aging and our agency specifically, we focus on being stewards of taxpayer money. Almost all of our agency's funds come from taxpayer sources. And that's important to know because we focus on accountability. We are cost conscious and we are also frugal. In fact, frugal to the point of problems sometimes, almost to a fault. Our independent audit for our agency shows that year after year, less than 5% of our dollars are spent on administration. So you have to understand that we maximize and leverage federal and state resources. If we were exempt from state sales tax right now, $35,000 would be put back into our organization. And you might be asking, well, what would you be doing with that extra money? Well, I can tell you there's a lot to be done because there's a lot of unmet needs out there. But one of the things on my mind today is more help for people seeking resources and information for Medicare benefits counseling. We are in desperate need for people and staff to help these folks figure out what's going on with their Medicare. And I also want to say that these Medicare counseling sessions are saving people money, sometimes to the tune of thousands of dollars, that those dollars are not going to the insurance companies, they're going to stay in that community. We also need support, would be using it for support for friendship meals. And what does that mean? Well, our cooks and field services people, they're not making anything close to probably what a lot of folks are making in the world of better wages. And right now, we are facing a $600,000 shortfall in that program, which we're working to figure out how we're going to deal with by September 30. And there's a whole lot of other programs that we are supportive, and we need the funding so that we can maintain our staff resources. I know that some area agency staff in other places have the executive director answering the phone because of the challenges and the many hats that we have to wear. So the fiscal note for this bill does reflect the amount of monies that our agency and the 7 other nonprofit area agencies would forfeit each year, or currently forfeit each year, to pay sales tax, monies that we believe should be invested in services for the older Kansans, people living with disabilities, and their caregivers, who we have an obligation to support in our state. Thank you. I appreciate your votes to move this bill forward, and I stand for any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Julie. Committee, any questions? You brought up a couple of items. I'll ask real quickly. Are you still doing the assessment for KDADs? I think it was an 11-page assessment. You guys have more data, just so the committee knows,
Yes,
on
we do.
individuals in the state of Kansas than anyone. Personal, I mean, it's a big security issue for me, but that's a whole nother issue. I'll
Yes.
stay on the bill as I ask my senators on the committee too. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you,
Our
Madam Chair.
next conferee is Karen Wilson. Welcome to the committee, Karen.
Good morning, Chair Tyson and members of the committee. My name is Karen Wilson, and I am the Executive Director for the Northeast Kansas Area Agency on Aging. We are located, oh, I'm sorry, is that better? We are located in Hiawatha, Kansas, and we serve 7 counties. So we border Nebraska and Missouri both. And we have a kind of an interesting challenge in our area that some of the other border areas have, is we see a lot of our residents move out of our state, and we would like to be able to provide more services to keep them in our state. Over 90% of our funding is from state, federal, and local governments, and so we are using our allocations to, in turn, pay for sales tax. So if we could have a sales tax exemption, we would be able to provide, as Julie said, a lot more services, a lot more items. We are currently trying to determine how many incontinent products to buy for our clients. You know, you think that's not that big a deal, but has anybody ever priced incontinent products? They're quite spendy, and you know, we have residents that are trying to reuse them, and it's not a really good idea. But so we are trying very hard to stretch our funds as far as we can and to keep our seniors and our disabled in our communities, paying sales taxes, paying property taxes, being in the environment that they choose. I mean, I don't know anybody who wants to go to an institutional setting. We want to help them, provide that support, provide that information, provide those options. A lot of times the options are kind of overwhelming. You know, my parents and my grandparents, when they got into, I will just state that I do support Senate Bill 101. I hope we can pass it out of committee. I agree with all of the things that have been said. And at this time, we'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Karen. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Committee, we have one conferee. Michelle, we have like 1 minute left. Do you have any additional information to add?
You know, my colleagues did a fabulous job of stating the purpose and what we would be using this funding for. My agency covers 18 counties. And so it is imperative that we do maximize the value of service dollars as much as we possibly can. For instance, in my area, if I were not having to pay sales tax, I could probably provide about 2,900 and more hours of attendant care and homemaker hours, which is simply bathing, shopping, housekeeping, laundry, those basic services needed to keep people in their homes and communities as long as possible. But other than that, I do appreciate your time. And if you have any questions for me, I would be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Committee, I'll draw your attention to Leslie Anderson's written testimony. Any other proponents? Any opponents? Any neutral? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 101. Committee, thank you for your work today. Is there any other business to be brought before the committee? Seeing none, committee, we will deal with property tax next week. I know a lot of you are getting questions, and so PVD is going to come in for an informational hearing. Also, we have a couple of hearings on property taxes. I do plan to work legislation next week, so we will try to get that finished. We're going to try to finish up. I've been told that they are not running any bills during veto session. So we need to finish our work as soon as possible. And I know several of you have bills that you want to see worked, and I would like to get those worked too. So any other business before the committee? So plan on working a lot of bills next week, in other words. I'm kidding. Thank you, guys. I hope you have a good weekend.